covering the Sixers for Liberty Ballers, Mr. Paul Hudrick. How are you today, Paul?
I'm doing all right, Tyrone. How are you?
All right. Now, I'm going to say something that may be hyperbole. It's been our Twitter poll today, and I want to get your reaction. If I said that this Sixers season was the most disappointing season in Philadelphia sports history relative to from expectations to results, what would you say?
It might be pretty fair. Yeah. I mean, it's at least in recent memory, it's up there. I would the only season, at least from a Sixers perspective, that I would put it up there with recently is the Al Horford year after they let Jimmy Butler walk in free agency, and they signed Al Horford and got Josh Richardson. And obviously, I think that season gets a little bit lost in the shuffle because it was the bubble and all that. But that season, if you recall, was they were considered pretty high expectations for that team, and that team did not do very well. Wound up getting bounced in the first round and swept. So, but I mean, it's certainly one of the most disappointing seasons I can remember in Philadelphia sports for sure.
Paul, it's been a turbulent season for Tyrese Maxey, and obviously now he's shut down for the year. But covering the team as you do every day, what did you learn about Tyrese Maxey this season?
Well, I wouldn't say I've learned, but something that maybe was reinforced is that I will never put a ceiling on this guy because every time someone does, he seems to shatter it. And when I say that, I'm mostly talking about his defensive growth this year because lost in how horrible this season was and how miserable it was. And, even Tyrese would admit, his offense, he struggled a little bit at times. His 3-point percentage went down a little bit. Because he was asked to do so much more and do more with less, essentially. But defensively, he really grew. He's up in steals per games, leaders, playing kind of Nick Nurse's style that he wants to play of get deflections, get out in transition, and run. Even on ball, something the Celtics had always done in the past was hunt him and make sure, hey, we're going to get Tatum or get Jaylen Brown on Tyrese Maxey. And when you watch those matchups this past season, Tyrese acquitted himself really quite well in those situations. I don't think he's ever going to be an all-defensive team kind of player, but the growth was significant to me this year. So, to me, this is a guy who's going to continue to work. He's going to continue to add to his game. He's going to continue to improve. He's only 24 years old. So, to me, that's the biggest thing that stands out is that defensive improvement and how I really refuse to put a ceiling on this kid.
At the same time, Paul, working off of that, clearly we saw that him without Embiid does not lead to very many victories. And now Embiid's going to have another surgery next week. Now, I'm not going to ask you why they're waiting or whatever. Obviously, this guy is the most important part of the franchise, and really right now the number one thing has to be getting that surgery correct. What percentage at this point, how much hope can fans have that this surgery doesn't get Embiid back to playing 82 games, because that very well never could happen, but could get him back to playing, let's say, 50 good basketball games that are Joel Embiid? Like what percentage can we put that on? Because a lot of our fans' immediate future is resting on this surgery next week.
I'm not sure I could put a percentage on it. I really can't, but I would put it like this. The reality is, this surgery is not going to make him magically grow meniscus back. That meniscus is gone, and so that's just something he's going to have to deal with for the rest of his career and really the rest of his life after basketball. So there's that. I will say, and this is, for my nearly decade of covering the team, I've gotten I could probably have some type of degree in just meniscus, alone. But an arthroscopic surgery, what it's going to do is it's going to do a couple things. One, it's going to remove any scar tissue that's there from the previous surgery, and there is a good chance that there is some of that because he did come back very quickly to play in that, to finish the regular season and played a very hard-fought playoff series against the Knicks and then played in the Olympics not long after that. So there could be a good amount of scar tissue, and that could have been what was causing some of that pain and swelling he had in the knee. Also, this surgery will promote, ideally will promote blood flow to the knee, which again should promote healing, and that could also help alleviate some of that nagging pain and some of that swelling that occurred this year. I say that, but I'm not saying that to act like his knee is going to magically be great and he's going to get through a season, he's going to be, MVP Joel Embiid. I say that to say, this is kind of like the step they're taking and hoping that what he dealt with this season specifically, which, again, it was that pain, it was that swelling, that it helps that subside, and then he can go about strengthening the rest of his knee, strengthening the joints and the muscles around it to make up for that lost meniscus so that he's in better shape to play next season. So I really can't put a percentage on it, but I think that's what they're hoping for, because some of the more radical ideas you maybe don't want to go to. You want to try every option you can before you have to do that.
In your opinion, Paul, what should be the first step for the Sixers as they try to head this thing in the right direction?
That's a really good question. I would say, to me, you're going to, I know some people are, trade Joel Embiid, trade Paul George. Look, that's probably not going to happen, because if you're going to trade one of those guys, it's a salary dump at this point. You're selling extremely low. You are going to have to attach future assets to probably get off those contracts. So if you're doing that, you're not only weakening the team by not taking a chance on Joel Embiid and Paul George being healthy, but you're hurting the future of the team by getting rid of assets. So, to me, if I'm Daryl Morey, my first thought is, okay, I don't know what Joel Embiid's going to look like next year. I just don't. It's really hard for me to know. But he's going to be here next year. So what do I do to make the team good enough so that what happened this season when Joel Embiid misses a significant amount of time, I'm not just hemorrhaging losses and just losing games. So how do I build the best team possible when Joel Embiid isn't playing? Re-signing Quentin Grimes is a pretty good start. Having Tyrese Maxey back, having Jared McCain back, that's all a pretty good start. But what do you do with those other, you don't have a ton of flexibility. So the one thing Daryl Morey and his scouting department has done well is find these guys on the margins. Find a Kelly Oubre Jr. whose market was really poor, but he's played pretty well for 2 years. Finding a Gershon Yabusele who was out of the NBA for years and looks now to be a pretty solid NBA rotation player. Finding a Justin Edwards undrafted. In the lottery, finding a Jared McCain in the middle rounds, and that guy looks like every bit like he's going to be a really good NBA basketball player. So, to me, if I'm Daryl Morey, I am really searching on the margins to find players that are really going to help. Unlike last year when it was guys like Eric Gordon and Reggie Jackson, Kyle Lowry, Andre Drummond, get younger, get more dynamic, like he said at the trade deadline, with those moves to get Grimes, to get Jared Butler. Keep going in that direction, get younger, get more dynamic, so that you have a better chance to survive long absences from those guys.
We're speaking with Paul Hudrick. He does a tremendous job covering the Sixers for Liberty Ballers. Going to Paul George, you mentioned Paul George there. This was kind of a lost season. And the city of Philadelphia now has limited patience for him. He's now podcast Paul and all that kind of stuff. You know how it is here. You've lived here your whole life, so you know what this is like. Assuming that they go through with that plan that they do, we know how it can get toxic sometimes. What does Paul George need to do, in addition to being healthy, so that if he is back next season and Embiid is healthier and Maxey is back and Grimes is back, so where it doesn't get that toxic, almost Tobias Harris-like thing around it? Because I think that stuff on the margins does affect the team.
Yeah, and so for me, and I think I would say this for Joel too, is the reality is if those guys can't be depended upon to play 50, 60 games a year, they need to understand that this is going to be Tyrese Maxey's team, and their roles need to be to optimize Tyrese Maxey as much as humanly possible and help him as much as humanly possible. Tyrese has to be the number one option. And look, I hear what you said earlier. For the most part, it has not gone well when it's just Tyrese Maxey. But the problem is the team was not set up well to perform without Joel Embiid, and it was really leaving Maxey on an island. And when I look back on this season, the best stretch they had, there was a point where they won 4 straight games. They fought the Nuggets really hard. They fought the Celtics really hard. And that was a stretch where it was Tyrese Maxey's show, and it was just a bunch of role players around him. But they had a little bit of continuity. So with that, they played some really good basketball, and Tyrese was outstanding during that stretch. So I think there are ways to do it where, again, Joel Embiid is not going to have a usage rate over 30 and where Paul George is, basically, I hate to say it, but like a glorified 3-and-D guy, where he's hitting the open shots, he's finding the open man, and he's adding complementary playmaking as opposed to being a number one or number two option. So I think for Paul, he's got to accept his fate a little bit, and I think he's okay with that. Like, I don't think he came even in here expecting to be the guy, right? Like, he came in here expecting Joel and Tyrese to be the number one and number two, and then he was going to be the number three guy. I think he already knew that. So to me, Tyrone, the biggest thing for him is just be healthy, get healthy, and if you're not healthy, don't play. Because we saw what happens when he tried to push through it. It just he couldn't do it, and he was actively hurting the team. So I think that's the other thing too, Tyrone, with him and Joel. If you aren't healthy enough to the point where you're helping this basketball team, you need to realize that, look in the mirror, and say, I'm not helping. I'm better off sitting down, taking some time off, letting this be Tyrese's show, and then when I'm fully healthy, that's when I come back.
Paul, before we let you go, to what point, there was a Sixers game this season that I watched. And when I sat down to do the show prep the next day, I put on the sheet that Paul George didn't play. When I watched the game, knew he played, and he had done so little, I forgot that he played. To your point, literally, I put it on the sheet like, Sixers lost without Paul George at the beat. Like, wait a minute. Paul George had played, but he had done so little, I forgot he had even suited up. So I remember that happening sometime in, I think, December, where I literally did the show prep as if he didn't play when he did it. So if I was like, he did play, I'm like, wait, did he? That's how poor he was at times, forcing him ways through. So great point by you. Really appreciate the time, and we'll see if they lose another game tonight, because they're double-digit underdogs against the Bucks, even though Dame's not playing. So thanks so much for the time, man.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. Really appreciate it. If you want more of this content, make sure you like and subscribe. And you can do that kind of over here if you want more of the best show ever.